Well, good evening, everyone. We have a slight change in things that are going on because I'm in a different place. But then again, I'm always somewhere in a different place. And this month, episode 33. Can you imagine that? 33. It's all about love because it's February. So let's do the introduction, shall we? Shall we start with the boys since they're in the minority? Tony, on you go.
Hi everybody, my name's Tony Gordon. I come in Changing Mind Limited. I work with individuals normally 40 to 55 years old who are stuck in a rut, looking to get their life back on track, trying to get a way forward. So I just give them new resources, techniques and processes just to help them to take those first steps towards taking back control of their life. I also work with students to help them so they don't become these people in the future. That's me.
Thank you. Willie.
Good evening, everyone. I'm a former police officer. I could have said evening all, but I chose not to. Former police officer, corporate security manager, and now I'm a personal development coach. And like Tony, I help people with their stuff because everyone has stuff they want more of and stuff they want less of. And I help them using certain resources and modalities to achieve that goal.
Groovy. I was just about to actually sing something there, Willie, or hum something anyway, but I realised that it would go right. We would be having the from Angela, but I might do it anyway because you said it. Evening all. You know that one? Dixon the Dock Green.
Yes. Well, we're showing you the antiquity there, Leslie.
Oh yes, I know, but then again, I don't care anymore. I loved Dixon the Dock Green. It was good. So, Mary.
Well, I'm another coach who came to coaching via project management, IT project management, and I knew nothing about IT, but I did like people. And so what I do is I coach people who are really busy. I take those poor people who worked really hard, got the promotion, and then get stuck. They're my dream people, and I love working with them while we figure out a way to make them shine and thrive in their new roles. And that's my happy place.
Groovy. Tanys, since you're all the way from Canada.
Yes, I'm Tanys Coughlan. Yes, Tanys Coughlan, founder of the Twillo Lifestyle Community, Twillo Lifestyle Academy. And we help people live up to their greatest potential. I'm an intuitive energy healer, so I'm a Reiki master, crystal master, that stuff. Celtic shamanic high priestess, and a channel. And I do stuff for my clients, like Willie said.
Yeah, we've been talking stuff a lot recently, haven't we?
I help my clients on their spiritual path.
With their stuff.
With their stuff.
Or without their stuff, as the case may be.
Well, we like to have them without that stuff and have this stuff in. So, like Willie was saying, we sort out their stuff.
Yeah. Sort it out. Some in, some out.
That's
Trudi.
right.
Hi everybody, I'm Trudi, based in Wiltshire. The 5 Elements Retreats, I'm a Reiki master and holistic practitioner, helping you to feel calm, restored, and just generally more balanced. We're not going to talk about stuff.
Right, Angela.
I'm all about the stuff, right? So I'm a health kinesiologist, transformational coach, and hypnotherapist. And hot off the presses, mindfulness coach as well. So I've got loads of new stuff, yay! Loads of different modalities and things that so I can use my stuff to help you with your stuff to then move forwards without stuff, unless you want more stuff, just as Willie was saying. So yeah, it's a whole lot of stuff.
Look at that, Willie! You started a trend.
Yeah.
So would appear. I could also say to help people with a
Yeah.
Another one.
Stuff. That's what he means.
Stuff.
I don't think there's a reactionary poo emoji on Zoom, so we'll leave that where it is.
Oh, I could have a play later on when you upload
there's an idea. I love it when a plan comes together. So I'm Leslie Marsh, in case you didn't know, and I usually have bit of knocking the stuffing out of the stuff on occasions myself. And I am a therapist, a hypnotherapist, and I usually call myself an holistic coach because it takes a whole load of modalities and actually says, do you need that? Is that the right one for you? Or shall we give you this one instead? And then we see what works for each individual person. But the thing is that everyone is individual, everyone's unique, and therefore that's why we are all here. Because some people will get on better with the stuffing getting knocked out of them by Willie or by Tony, or putting back in, or, you know, just shuffling it around and having a guddle with
All
it.
about, yeah.
Yeah, shake it all about, the hokey cokey stuff. So,
I know that song.
yeah, so do I. Yes. But we're not talking about the hokey cokey. Well, or are we?
Maybe.
Because we're talking about love. That thing.
How do you spell it the way you said that? How many U's and R's and V's are in there?
Oh, well,
Quite a
I don't
few.
know, but I'll tell you what, since you said that, you're reminding me of the fact that you know 5 Greek words for it, so you can go ahead and do that.
So it's interesting because actually when whoever it was that mentioned that we would use this as a topic, that was what was going through my head, was the different words for it. And yeah, so the Greeks have got at least 5 different words to use for love, depending on what type of love it is. And back in the mid-90s, I was at a youth camp, and that was a topic of the week. And each day we looked at a different aspect of love based on the Greek dividing it up. So you've got the erotic love, which I can pronounce as eros. And then you've got the friendly love, which I think is pronounced, now forgive me, I always get told off for my pronunciations. I think it's called philia. And then you've got familial love, which is storge. Again, storge, I think. It gives me a little clue as to how to pronounce it. I'm not even going to attempt this next one, which is self-love. It's another one begins with a P, but I don't think it sounds like it begins with a P. So yeah. Anyway, so you've got self-love as number 4, and number 5 is agape, which is unconditional or altruistic love. So it depends on which version of love you want to talk about. Or is it all of them?
I like the other one, the 6th one. Scunnered.
Okay,
that's
you've lost me
that's
now
not one of,
officially.
that's not one of the Greek ones.
No, that's a Scottish one.
But I'd still love to know what that means.
Well, take the idea of being fed up and then multiply it by like 1 billion.
Infinity.
You've got scunnered.
Well, as we say in the west of Scotland, when you're really bad, you're clinically scunnered.
Clinically scunnered.
Language is wonderful.
It is, which is why I am not loving the fact that emojis are coming back into the thing, so and taking over a lot of language. It loses its eloquence somewhere along the line. I mean, we have all these words for love, but actually what we're talking about is describing a feeling, an emotion that has an ocean of meanings and is absolutely unique to the person who is feeling it, which is where we find ourselves in interesting spaces sometimes. What do you think, Tanys?
Yeah, definitely. You know, and the other thing is that it's unlimited. So, you know, we think we can only love one person, right? It's all those different kinds of loves that come in. So it is an individual thing. It's based on how we perceive it, the person offering love and the person receiving. Perception is everything.
Well, that's true, because basically it's not one size fits all. You love people for different reasons and in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, and animals too. But, you know.
And plants and crystals.
Yes, everything really.
Stuff.
I don't exactly call animals stuff, but anyway.
No, I said and stuff.
Oh,
so
and
you can
stuff.
love your car, you can love your house, you can love etc.
I've never loved an etc. in my life. I like
That's your choice.
I like notifications. I like the whole thing to be spelled out for me so that I know exactly what's happening, etc. It just has too many cul-de-sacs. Mary, what do you think?
Well, what I think is what's coming up for me is that there's a lot of times when we talk about love, it's outward facing. And the older I've gotten, the more I realize that actually my self-love actually is the most important bit for getting everything started. But when we think about how we raise children, how we engage with the world, it's the one that possibly gets the least attention. And when we talk to little tots, little smallies, love your brother, love your sister, how often do we tell them to love themselves?
I don't tell them because I don't speak to tots.
Oh yeah, I was actually thinking back and said, actually we don't.
Yeah.
And I do think that then sometimes as we get older, we get this incredible place where we're giving, and we get spent. And I think it creates lots of damage.
But that's part of the potty training that we grow up with, isn't it? Because we're taught to share.
Yeah.
And to share, therefore, we have to be giving. And we forget about the receiving thing. You know, the old thing about it's better to give than to receive. Is it? Why would it be better? Because,
You can't give if you haven't received, though.
Yeah, you can. You can give if you haven't received. You can receive if you haven't given. There's this, I think, what was it? And it came up the other day for me as well. I think you mentioned it, Mary, on one of the last ones, was this: when we are given a gift and we say, oh, you shouldn't have.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And how is that, because that kind of ties into that in the worthiness stakes. Is you're saying you shouldn't have because you're embarrassed that you didn't get them something, or you're embarrassed because you feel unworthy of the attention. And if that's the case, where did that come from?
And I think it's part of
this need to constantly giving and not receiving.
Yep. And I'm doing quite a bit of work at the moment with people who are moving jobs, just as nature of the way things are happening at the moment. But even asking them to show themselves self-care, to actually have compassion for themselves, to love themselves. Sometimes it takes an awful lot of work to get that to actually even land. The idea that I have to love myself first before I can give to others. It's amazing sometimes how much difficulty people have with actually accepting that this matters and it's important.
Because there's a belief that we're not supposed to. Tony, what do you think?
I agree a lot with Mary's saying, and it's funny she mentioned there about the self-care, because I do this a lot with people. And it's not so much the love, but first of all, I get them to forgive themselves first before they can learn to love themselves. Because we look as we think, especially as business owners or people in the industry, we work a lot on our own, not with the family or out with them, trying to do things to provide for them. And how many people do this in jobs all over the world? Their whole life is about providing. So they're given their time, their energy to give things eventually for their family. But they lose a lot at the same time because they're not with them. And they're trying to get that balance. So they have to learn to forgive themselves, first of all, from doing these things, to learn to love themselves. And it's the same you said about giving and receiving. Before you can receive love from anybody, you have to be able to give yourself that love, because you'll never be able to receive it. You won't understand what it's like when someone's trying to give it. And then you end up, what Marie were talking about earlier, saying, oh, you shouldn't have. But if you've done enough and you've forgiven yourself and you have that self-love, you have that build your own self-esteem up, you never feel that way. And you never feel embarrassed about giving love to someone else. Earlier, you mentioned, Leslie, it was like feelings and emotions. But remember, it's also behaviours and actions. A love can be shown by the way we act towards other people. You don't have somebody have to say a word. You can just act in that way. Your behaviour is it. So I think it's taking a bit of all that into it. But yeah, starting with yourself before you can do it with other people. Learn to love yourself.
Trudi?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm always saying to my clients and friends to love themselves, to shine their light, and the only way they can do that is by connecting with their inner self and knowing that they're worthy. And I think it's really important to love ourselves first so that we can then offer that love to others in a different way and a way that we need to do it. But as you say, so many people are conditioned when they're younger not to say, I love myself, and stuff like that. And I think that's where it's more difficult for children. So I think children now are showing a different way of loving, and I think it's really important for that. And to have a pet, because if you have a pet, then obviously you can love that pet and show the pet different things, and different emotions come through with that as well, don't they?
Yeah, that's a kind of unconditional love situation.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because tiny little babies love everything about themselves. They love their toes so much that they want to play with them and bite them and sook them. They love their poo so much that they're into their nappies. They love everything about themselves. But we almost educate them out of it.
Yep.
Potty training, yes.
Potty training. Yeah.
I don't know that's necessarily stopping themselves from loving themselves, but it's the point of they love everything about themselves. There's nothing about that little body and that little person that doesn't love themselves. But
I actually think it is a huge part of it, because it's the first time they've been told something that came from my body is dirty and horrible and has to be put away. And that, I think, it starts taught, there.
Isn't it?
I know I know there's practical hygiene reasons why we do it, but it is part of teaching them, and it's how we approach it. We were actually telling them something that came from your body is horrible. It's probably the first time they're hearing that.
That's interesting, because it immediately brings, sorry, Angela, in advance, spoiler alert, vision coming on. It brings back a memory from when I was where this mountain is, Tibet, and noticing, I thought that this little toddler had torn the arse out of his pants. And then I realized they were actually sewn that way because they don't have nappies. So when he wanted to go to the toilet, all he did was squat, and the trousers would kind of open naturally and it would just fall.
Like to say, I've just had my dinner, by the way.
Oh.
You're okay, Willie. I'm having mine when this finishes, or I was having mine when this finishes.
Well, don't you just love conversations like this?
I'm just how we got on from love to get onto that conversation. It's great how we can make things so that way.
But you know, it's a vast ocean, as we said. It's, you know, there are lots of fish in that ocean, and we're just, you know, putting the bait.
Well, I have an alternative one that I love using with clients, and I love sharing it. It's get them to get a photograph of themselves as a small tot, and ask them what they actually see. And it's fascinating, because we generally love small tots when we see them, not necessarily when we have to mind them for long periods of time, but when we just see them, we kind of can like them and like looking at them, particularly if they're other people's and we've no responsibility. They can be
for Leslie across the road, you're just looking as they walk past. You don't have to go anywhere near them.
But we can look at them with that unconditional, you know, it's unconditional. We just love and respond. So when we reconnect with that of ourselves, to me, it's one of the most valuable things I do with clients. That essence is still in there. Let's tap into it. Let's find it again.
I love that, because I do something similar. I get them to sit and actually imagine they're looking through a child's eyes. What does the world look like now? So what is it? And when you start talking that actual anxiety goes down. The anxiety starts to go. So you're actually grounding them without them realize what you're actually doing. You just get them to think and act. How would you sit? How would you look? What would you hear? What would you feel if you were looking through a child's eyes just for a couple of minutes? And it is amazing, you're right, how much changes someone's perception and changes the way they look at things.
Yeah.
Willie.
Well, follow that. I came across some very old photographs of me as a baby, and I was a very chubby baby, and I grew up to be a skinny boy and filled out as a man, and I had blonde curly hair. So it was astonishing that, I mean, the blondness didn't stay very long, but it became darker. But Tony's got a very good point. If you can imagine yourself as a child when you didn't have any worries or stress, apart from where your next lollipop was coming from, or something like that, you had no worries or stress, and everything was fresh and shiny and new, and you had no pressure, no one was bugging you, apart from when you didn't get that lollipop. And it's a great way of thinking, why can't we be like that? We grow up as adults, we have mortgages and debts and stresses and strains and worry and everything else, if we choose to. But we could choose also to be like that child and not let any of that stuff, nearly said the bad word there, stuff affect us adversely. So I think that's a great way of looking at it.
Mhm.
The thing is, though, sometimes with our clients, they didn't have a childhood like that. And asking them to look into that for themselves can sometimes bring back some interesting things. So we have to know what our client's history is to a certain extent before we present them with a picture of themselves and saying, what do you see there? Because we might not get the answer that we think we should be getting. Because after all, it's in childhood that most of the traumas stick. The frights, the first fright, the first experience of something that's unpleasant can make some interesting repercussions later on in life. So for one person, it might be something they'll sail through. They think it's great, it's wonderful. Another person, they'll be afraid of that situation for the rest of their lives until they get something done about it. And it's hard then to understand that you have to love yourself because you're possibly loving a fearful thing. And do you know how to love yourself if you weren't shown love by someone who loved themselves? How do we start it? Angela,
I knew you were going to come to
you
me.
blinked. I got the vibe from across the waves.
You've got to start it where they're at. You've got to take into account what is the situation for that client. I've not done the childhood ones because I don't visualize, as I think we've mentioned many times before. So I really struggle with that, connecting with the younger version of me. It's not something I've got an ability to connect with easily. I'm sure if I was forced and coerced and all the rest of it into it, I'd probably get there, but it wouldn't be a quick thing for me to get to. So I've had clients where during a correction, they've got to think, or in some cases say out loud, I love myself. And some of them, they can't get the words out their mouth because they don't understand what it means. So for some people, it's even taking it back to, okay, let's look at some dictionary definitions of the word love. What does it mean? If you want to go down the different Greek options, what do each of those versions mean? Can you connect with any of them? What have you seen that looks like a loving situation? And actually getting them to bring to mind, even if it's fairy tales, something that they can connect with as to, well, what does love actually mean? Because it's along the same lines as how asking your clients, are you happy? What does happiness mean? It's different for everybody, just like love is different for everybody, because we're all so unique and so individual. But it's finding something that they can connect with to then say, right, okay, this could be my definition of that word right now. And it might be different next week once they've done some work. But right now, this is my definition of the word love. This is what it means to me. So how do you then turn that around to get them to appreciate that there's aspects of them that can be loved? And it's giving them the permission. So I know, Tony, you were talking about forgiveness, but it's also that here's some permission. Let's give yourself permission to be loved, to feel love, to experience love, and then to show love without it being a desperation of possibly negative behaviours. I don't like using the word negative, but behaviours that are perhaps not healthy to try and get love.
Now, interesting point. And I'm thinking
Uh-oh.
here, and it's going around in my head at the moment. When it comes to the word, has its overuse that it's, you know, it's the next step from liking something. I just love that. I love that. I love that. But has that diluted the actual word for what it's ultimately supposed to be for?
Again, it's down to your own individual definition. So for some people, the step up from like is love. For other people, it's maybe 4 or 5 steps above like to get to love. But everybody's different. And And what I might love today, oh, do you know what? I love a cup of coffee. I might not like it tomorrow. And things will change and ebb and flow. And it's just about moving with it.
That's the bit. It was one of the things that my auntie said to me a long time ago when I was totally immune to this stuff. And it was a case of, she said to me at one point, don't go with somebody that you love, but you don't like. And my eyes crossed at that point. How could you not like them and love them at the same time? And then I realized what she was talking about, the attraction situation, the I love this in the moment situation. But
so in that situation, was she referring to lust rather than love?
No.
If you want to start labeling things.
No, she was talking about the long game. She was talking about the fact that liking and friendship will last a lot longer than the initial attraction situation, which might or might not be lust. But it's something that therefore we understand that love is a bit of a shapeshifter and it will grow and change.
It's like when people say they love someone but not in love with them anymore. It's like two different sides. You look at it similar to that. They love them overall. I still love them, but I'm not in love with them anymore.
Oh, let's face it, Tony, being in love is knackering. It's exhausting. It takes a lot of effort.
Are you not a fan?
No.
Is Andrew though?
No, he's not a fan. Yes, he does know. He does know. After all, he did marry me. He asked me, and I didn't ask him.
But again, that's back to those different. If you're looking at the kind of the Greek definitions, so that's the eros, erotic love, love of beauty, that kind of passionate love. So that's what I think you're referring to when you're talking about being in love with something. Is perhaps that definition. But it could be a friendly love, a love between equals, which was the philia one. So I guess it just depends on which stage of love you're at or which definition of love you're talking about. Because to love a cup of coffee is very different to be in love with your husband or your partner or your girlfriend or
you kind of have to figure out which one's more important though. Then you know. If you love a cup of coffee more than you love your husband, you could be in trouble.
I've actually
might not be
late at night.
You're cheating on coffee.
I am, but I did fancy a cup of tea tonight.
Well, there you go. Oh, you're really.
Shake up a bit.
Okay, where are we going with this one now?
But I think there's something interesting. I think there's an awful lot of judgment. Like when we're talking about love here, we're very clear it's around emotion and feelings, but there's not a lot of judgment. But I think in society as a whole, there's an expectation you must be in love. You must love this. Oftentimes in popular culture, there's this move that there's judgment. It's embedded in judgment. Whereas when I think of love and loving and that compassion and love, and there is no judgment. The judgment is the missing piece, isn't there? But I think there's a lot of expectations and bits attached onto our use of the word in that, as you were referring to, Leslie, we use love. It's the word itself has been used all over the place with all sorts of different meanings. That sometimes there's an awful lot of judgment, and which is the opposite of what the love piece is, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So judgment comes from the fear, right? So, which is like the opposite of love, vibrationally speaking, as well as, experiential. So when we're in fear, it's very difficult to love, although we are capable of doing both, because we can feel multiple emotions at the same time. But
yeah, I was thinking when Mary was talking there about the manipulative zone where it comes to, if you loved me, you would do this. You would give me this, you would give me that, which I vaguely remember from teenage years listening to people, because I was always off with animals. I didn't really deal with that kind of thing. And it was more or less a case of if you love me, you will let me do this to you, which is where a lot of abuse starts and comes in, which is why we now have the consensual situation going on, because it's come full circle right the way around.
But equally, if we look at the commercialization of Valentine's, the expectation, if you love me, you'd buy me the biggest card and the biggest box of chocolates, or the biggest, and the romantic dinner, and the this and the other, that there's an awful lot of stuff been attached onto it that has nothing to do with love.
Well, that's the 10cc song, isn't it? I mean, the whole point of the 10cc song coming around, I'm not in love, was he doth protest too much. And it actually came from the guy who wrote it. Eric, I think, was the one who wrote it. I can't remember his second name. His wife had said to him, "You never say you love me." And he said to her, "But if I said it to you all the time, it would lose its meaning, wouldn't it?" And that's kind of where the song started. So for all the reasons that he's not in love, he's very much in love. So there's always that kind of situation as well. So kind of meaning what you say and saying what you mean. But we have this old kind of knight in shining armor stuff going on, where we're brought up with the expectation that some guy is going to come up on a big white steed and take us away from all of this. And that was kind of promoted by Disney a lot, and still certainly is to a certain extent. But at the same time, it came from Victorian values, and they had double standards, as we know. But at the same time, I nearly went into John Lennon there. what we possibly could do with more of is the idea that we can be more peaceful and more balanced if we were more open to the idea of love, not as this hearts and flowers, give me the biggest card you can and shove a bottle of champagne in with it situation, but with the small gestures, with the small understandings, with the small givings. Isn't that more appropriate, and isn't that more sustainable?
Well, that brings to mind the love languages too.
Oh
right?
yes,
Because
the 5
everybody,
languages of love.
Yeah, because we all receive and give love in different ways, and that's all about, do you have a shared understanding of what love means to you as a couple or as friends, right? So how do you give love and how do you receive it? And what does that expression mean to you in terms of that, right? So one person might want to do acts of service. Another one wants words of affirmation, and if they're not on the same page as to what the other one, how the other one receives love, then sometimes the message doesn't get through.
Well, to misquote an old saying, no greater love hath man or woman than, the next bit I'm going to say is, stay in a job for 30 years that you hate just to provide for your family. Now, is that a sacrifice? Is that love? I would suggest it probably is. For such a small 4-letter word, it has huge significance. If we didn't have love, there'd be no poetry and no songs. And the Beatles, All You Need Is Love, would never have been written. And all these corny films, Love Actually, Pretty Woman, etc., would never have existed. So I would suggest that as well as being an emotion, it's also like a concept that we kind of buy into. Love as an idea, as a structure, as a framework, as a concept, rather than, admittedly, as well as the emotion, the feeling, emotion, energy and motion, that feeling you get when you're in love with someone. Maybe like stress, you get the fluttering heart, the butterflies in the stomach. That love, was that stress? Anyway.
I think there's a very thin line between the two.
But the idea, it's not unique to everyone, I don't think, but we are, as Angela says, unique, and it means different things to different people. And you can use the word in so many contexts, like I love a cup of coffee. I love my wee dog. I found out once he passed away. I was absolutely gutted. I love my mates who put up with me, take the piss out of me, excuse my French, and so on. I love being in their company. So that word has different meanings in different levels. We could be here till next week just discussing it. And it's whatever you feel or understand as love, in whatever context it is, with your partner, with your kids, with your dog, with your pals. As long as there's love there, what does it say? Love makes the world go round. As long as there's love kicking about somewhere, it's not such a bad place to be.
Let's strip it down, strip it back for a while. If that's probably the wrong word, but never mind. Let's take the
Moving
bells
on.
and whistles off. Oh no, that's even worse. When it comes down to the bottom line, basically,
Spit it out.
connection. It's about connection. It's about who and what we connect with. We are pack animals. We're mammals. We're warm-blooded and we seek each other's company. But we will always have a hierarchy and we will have preferences. Now, some people say that it's the psychology thing going on where it's the ego meeting an ego that it recognizes. Well, that actually means that there's more to us than flesh and bone. Because if we're connecting mind to mind and heart to heart, if we want to put it that way, then the body's not got a lot to do with it. And I know when we talk about judgment, on occasions it's a case of you've seen two people together and gone, how does that work? But of course, because we don't see it, because we can't actually imagine it, or we can't figure out what's going on between them, doesn't mean that they haven't got a connection, which I think is actually part of a dating advert at the moment. Go with who gets you kind of thing. And that's it. We have to get the other person. They have to get you, that you have to get them in order for them to be a connection that will last. And it's building on that connection. And we've kind of called the cement of that love. So what we're looking for when we started off, because let's face it, marriage originally was a contract. It was a business deal. And it didn't matter what the woman felt about. She was just the chattel that was going to be given away for the dowry and the whole thing and whatever she had going. And then she was going to produce the little heirs and spares and whatever. But somewhere along the line, in some of these marriages, and quite a few of them, respect started to grow. Understanding started to grow. But part of that was dependence, because the woman would have been dependent completely upon the husband. So there's a kind of, depending on how they're treated will depend on how that particular orchid is treated, how it's looked after. And it has to be looked after. It has to be maintained. And that goes for self-love as well, does it not, Tanys?
Mm-hmm, for sure. I think, when my clients come in and they're having trouble with the self-love thing, we work on mirror work. So much like a couple of you were saying, I love yourself, but I actually do the Ho'oponopono in the mirror with them. And I include a couple of extra ones, right? So for me, the Ho'oponopono, there's different versions, but I'm sorry. Please forgive me. You are worthy. I love you. Thank you. You are enough. So those are the ones that we do in the mirror. And when they do that, it's amazing how it can transform how they feel about themselves, which ultimately transforms how you deal with other people and bring love into your other relationships, as we've been talking about. So self-love can be given in numerous ways. That's a great place to start if you're struggling.
And it's also in the connection of the eyes. I know
Yes.
from doing in the mirror work particularly, because we never look at ourselves in the eye in the mirror. We're always looking at the toothbrush or at the pluke that's grown up overnight or the next grey hair or something like that that's going on. But we very, very rarely actually look ourselves in the eyes. And we very, very rarely look each other in the eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Animalistically, it's a threat to do that anyway. It's very unusual for animals to look in the eye when they're not going to end up fighting or killing each other. But at the same time, one of the most powerful things that I've seen happening was an exercise like that. And it's the I am loved exercise. And if done with another person, even someone you don't know, when you are looking into someone else's eyes, as you say, not you are loved, but you're saying, I am loved. You're actually expressing it to another person. But what you're also seeing in the periphery of your vision is their face changing and accepting what you are saying, which makes it easier for you to accept it yourself. Because we are being the mirror.
I think one of the problems could be the use of the word self. Because if we say self-love or self-care, self-esteem, self-respect, it's all about me, self. And what is that? That's selfish. And we don't like to be seen to be selfish, because that doesn't paint us in a very good light. But self-care and self-love is not selfish, if done, if you like, correctly, as Tanys said. I'm reminded of the aircraft boarding instructions when the oxygen mask comes down, you put yours on first, so you can then help other people. So if you don't love yourself, how are you going to help other people to love themselves, if you like?
Yeah, that's the other one, self-preservation.
Exactly. So I find it quite difficult with men of a certain age, of which I am one, to sit and say, look in the mirror and tell yourself that you love yourself. I won't repeat some of the comments that have been made to me when I suggest that, but I do it. If I'm having a bad day and I haven't behaved very well, sometimes I don't do it, but I try to do it as often as possible, because I realise that if I don't love myself, with all my faults and foibles and all the other things that are wrong with me, well, how's somebody else going to love me? Self-help, as long as you get over the self bit, it's not selfish. It's, I would say, essential, if you like, to have self-care, self-love, self-esteem, self-respect, because you're worth it, if you like, as Tanys said. I'm worthy. I deserve this.
We have to monitor our self-talk when we're doing that.
Yeah.
And we have to recognise when we're not being kind to ourselves. So Mary, you probably deal with that with some people.
I would deal with it a lot, because I think, you know, I would deal with a lot of people who that inner judge talk, that I'm not good enough talk. We all do it. I mean, I've worked on myself for a number of years now, and I still find myself having that monkey chatter going on where I'm just negative. It still happens. It's almost like it's ingrained. My inner judge has never disappeared. I've quietened my inner judge, but not got rid of it. And it's, I don't have any expectation that I ever will. So I think it is an ongoing, and it's like, you know, Willie was saying, it's a constant reminder to yourself. Yeah, put yourself first. I'm inclined to say it's not selfish, it's selfless. Because we like selfless people. I encourage my people, no, self-care is selfless, not selfish. But that we do have this natural, I think a lot of us have this natural predisposition to negative self-talk. And that's where that lack of self-love, it's fed, and what we do more, and what we do more of, we get more of. So we kind of, it perpetuates itself. So, you know, if we focus on, like we're all familiar with, what we focus on, we get, it expands. So if we focus on that self-care, that love of self, that compassion, then we get more of it. Whereas if we stay stuck in the judgment, well, that's exactly what we'll get: more judgment and more negativity and more doubt and more frustration. So it does make a huge amount of sense, because it's like you're training a part of your brain, and you're training it to have certain thought patterns. And I think the more we spend with love and compassion and self-care, the world's a better place.
It's like when you've got that self-talk, how many people can honestly say they would ever talk to someone else the way they talk to themselves in their own head? How many people, how many friends would you still have, apart from you, Leslie, of course? How many friends would you still have? How many a family then would still be around you if you spoke to them the way you speak to yourself? And that's why I try and get the clients to do it. I agree with Willie. For guys, I'm sort of not far off that age as well, and trying to get them to talk about emotions is unbelievable. I use the word believe rather than love it. Start with them. Do they believe in themselves? Do they believe they can do something? Do they believe they're worthy enough? You take the word love out of it, and sometimes they'll actually go more with that. But it's the same concept. It's just using a different word. But it's that thing you get them to explain is, if you spoke to all your staff the way you talk to yourself on there, how many would you still have working for you? And it's amazing when I'm saying none of them would work with that. So why do we do it ourselves? But I think it's like Mary said, it's something you've got to get them to do every single day. So I get them to do the belief thing every morning. I believe in me every time, 3 times before they leave the house every morning, in their head. Don't need to say it out loud. If you do that and you go, you actually realise they go by a spring in a step before they even left the house. And because some guys find the word love awkward to say, that doesn't feel the same, but it's the same thing. It's conceptual. It's how they concept what that is in their own mind. But it is amazing when you get people who start realising that. Don't talk to yourself the way you wouldn't talk to someone else.
Another variant of that is if you talk to them about, when we talk about, going to some motivational speaker and going into a room and being inspired by somebody.
Yeah.
And when you think, and when you listen to your own thoughts, do you feel inspired?
Mm-hmm.
I've had friends that have said like self-deprecating comments, and I'll look at them and I'll say, don't talk to my friend that way. They'll say, oh, I'm so stupid. And I'm like, don't talk to my friend that way.
I'll try that one. Try that something.
I'm taking that one. I'm taking that.
It's brilliant because it gives them that moment of, oh, hang on a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the shock factor almost, isn't it?
It is. Mm-hmm. And they realize, oh, I'm talking about, oh, yeah, I'm not being very nice.
I think that's also a cultural thing that, when you're growing up, you're getting a bit big for your boots. Who do you think you are? Or the favourite one at school was, see him, see her. If she was chocolate, she'd eat herself. Right? So, well, that's a humour, but we're kind of conditioned to not get above our station, to not get too big. Don't blow your own trumpet, you. People won't like you. So that kind of sinks in. I thought, well, actually, I've done a good thing today. Why should I not blow my own trumpet? Mm-hmm. Why should I not be proud of what I've achieved? And self-belief, as Tony says, yeah, I did what I set out to do. My self-belief got me there. But it's, oh, Johnny Big Cigar, eh? Like, who do you think you are? There's apart from the negative self-talk, which you all do, and the kind of conditioning, the cultural pressures on us were such that, well, I better not do that. I better not say that. What will people think of me? Well, I'm sorry, who gives a stuff?
A monkeys.
That's the one.
When we think about it, though, we're taught that.
Yeah.
And we're taught that because that was taught to our parents, and their parents were taught by their parents, and it's come right the way down the line. And because of that, it's not just an opinion anymore, it's a belief. And as Tony knows, as we all know, beliefs are harder to shift than anything else, and sometimes bloody damn near impossible. Angela, you were going to say something.
I was going to say about it's about the self-acceptance as well. So whether you want to put self in front of it or not, it's the acceptance piece. We can't change what we're doing unless we accept where we're at right now. So if you're going to go on a journey and stick it in the sat nav, you've got to accept this is where I am just now to start my journey. If we can't accept where we are, it's much more difficult to change, to move somewhere else. And then when it comes to negative self-talk, yeah, you might not be able to get rid of it. Perhaps work on turning the volume down.
Yeah. When I was working in Birmingham, somebody phoned me up. It was coming up to Christmas, and they were kind of desperate. And they were phoning me up asking me if I would do a locum over Christmas. And they wanted me to do a week without, stopping, a week of night shifts without stopping, and day shifts. And of course that was illegal anyway, but they were stuck. So we started talking money, and one of the other vets was listening into my conversation. And I gave a price, and they sort of balked at it. And I said, well, listen, you called me. If you can find anybody else who will do it for less, then on you go. And they took my offer. And I came off the phone, and he said to me, you think a lot of yourself, don't you? I said, don't you think a lot of me because you work with me and you're always asking for me?
But you knew your own self-worth.
Yeah, I knew how much I was worth.
But that threatens people sometimes as well. When we are aware of our own self-worth.
Oh, as a vet nurse, it was.
But it threatens other people because they're not aware of their self-worth. So again, with the mirroring, they're seeing in you, how does she have that? That's not appropriate. I can't have that, so she can't have it either.
Yeah, but the shock value was there as well because, you know, it was a case of when I got there, I was given a list of stuff to do. You know, if you're going to get paid that much, then, you know, and I said, I don't do that. That's kennel maid's work. That's not what you employed me for. And if you don't like it, I'll walk. Because my experience with vets as bosses is that nurses are 10 a penny. And basically, you know, you get rid of one wee girlie who's got a wee vocational thing going on because she loves to play with animals. You'll get another one in and you can pay them less. So you have to actually stand up and
counted.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But that's just it. After I did that, I was shaking because that's the first time I'd ever done it. I actually asked for that amount of money. I was like, oh, sure. But at the same time, it's a case of my training was different to a lot of people's trainings. And my experience is different to a lot of other people's experiences. So in some places, that's like gold. But you see, the thing is, it's another thing about love. When you love your job so much, people will take advantage of you. Oh, you don't do this for the money, you do it because you love it. Yeah, because Tesco takes barter.
And you find that's one of the biggest challenges with holistic therapists, with complementary therapists, is that it's deemed as being something that should be cheap, or, well, everything else is available for free on the NHS. Why can't I get that too? Well, we're not available on the NHS or whatever the alternatives are.
Well, we'd love to be. We'd love to be. But
that would be quite
unfortunately,
nice.
We won't.
But it's not reality right now. So we're not available on the NHS, but you don't go to the doctors and they're not working for free. They're getting paid. So it's a service, and we are part of, we offer a service to our clients, and there's a monetary attachment to that. It's not, yeah, we might love what we do, but there's got to be that trade-off.
Well,
and exactly as you said, the supermarkets don't take, I really like your chocolate, can I have some?
Yeah. But it's like a situation where you're actually saying, I believe that because you believe this, then you must give me this for free because I don't believe that that should be paid for. I'm sorry, but I paid a hell of a lot of pennies to be able to do this for you. Actually, I'm not sorry.
Takes you back to loving themselves again, because if they love themselves enough, they won't invest in themselves enough. That's what they're doing. They're not paying us for necessarily the service. They're actually paying to invest in themselves, because what are they going to get out of it in the long run? It is the solution. It's the outcome that they're seeking, not what we do. It's the outcome they actually want. You say somebody saying the same, you go into a hotel or something like that, you're going to pay for the room. It doesn't matter if it's just somewhere you're going to sleep, but you're only there for a short period of time, but you're still willing to do that because that's what you need for that, invest in that. That sleep helps you, the same as what we do. That helps your body and mind in a different way. So they're investing in themselves rather than paying for something.
I'm going to surf the wave of generalization here and say that every single one of us does what we do because we love the feeling it gives us when it works. And it usually works one way or another.
Yeah.
That look on people's faces when they get it, when they're feeling the change, when the paradigm is shifting inside of them. We sit back, and even although we were just like the hostesses or the hosts going, yeah,
facilitators.
this is, yes, we're the facilitators, we're the conduits, if you like.
Yeah.
We love that feeling because that feeling is gifted to us by love.
See, Leslie, you do love something.
Yes, I didn't say I didn't. I just said I was immune to that kind we were talking about earlier. For a while. I did fall foul, but that's another story. So, but it's one of those things that it's the association of the word. How people associate that word. Oh, I love that guy. He just does this and he does that and he's so good. Yeah. You're going to stay with him for 25, 30 years doing that all the time, because I guarantee you that's not going to happen all the time. At one point, you're going to walk in, he's going to be farting and picking his toenails.
You paint some great pictures, Leslie, you know that.
That's all right, Angela, I can't see them. That's when you discover the unconditional love of a wife. Has its moments and has its point of exit.
I'd just like to point out that it's not only men who do that.
I know. I know.
I was going to say, I think it's a human thing.
The thing is, women rarely get caught doing it. Usually the man doesn't care getting caught. Which in some ways I'm quite jealous of, in a way.
Well, if you loved the other person, you wouldn't be doing that, would you?
Needs must, Willie.
Unconditional love, you share everything, don't you?
That's right, guys will share it with you, you hide it.
Oh, Trudi.
We share it with you, so we
That has to be said.
Yeah, there's such a thing as oversharing, Tony.
How has the conversation degenerated to this level?
Well, you see, I absolutely
it.
love it when these conversations degenerate like this, because it's one of those things that
away.
I always find a way. Yes, I am the lowest common denominator. I am low, I am common, and I will denominate.
And I encourage it.
Thank you.
Yeah, who invited you back?
Me.
She needed a sidekick.
The thing is, though, that there are situations where we have to behave, and some, you know, and occasionally
When have you ever behaved?
That's when I get into trouble. That's why I don't behave that often, because it's by trying to behave, it's so unnatural to me that I kneecap the Archbishop of Monaco with his own pew kind of thing. You know, because, you know, I didn't really want to be there in the first place. They made me wear a skirt. No. If you're not comfortable in doing something, things will happen that are not going to be as expected or appreciated in some ways. If you are who you are and you are loved just because of that, then everything's fine. Oh, don't worry about that. It's just Leslie. She'll do that. If you don't want to say something, don't tell her. Don't say no, don't do that. Because she loves to be a bit of an imp.
Love you just the way you are.
Well, the way I want to be. When the time is right. Because like everybody else here, and possibly watching when we do get people who watch, we all are multifaceted. We all have different behaviors with different people and in different situations. And okay, Willie, I'm going to go there because you had a uniform at one point. When you took the uniform off, you weren't police person Willie all the time. You were still there as police person, but there was part of it that you hung up in the closet with the uniform. And when you don the uniform, it's like sergeants. They don't wander about the street going into Tesco with their greens and their scrub gloves. No, they're in their normal clothes, but then they go through a phase, a stage, where they divest themselves, and there's a word, they divest themselves of their outdoor stuff and they put the uniform on to become the machine that is the surgeon. No emotion, no that, but they love their jobs. They love what they do because they're fixing things and they're given a lot more than people think they are, because what policemen, policewomen, soldiers, you name it, even the postman on occasions, are giving of themselves in order to provide us with a service. And because we don't get to see it that often, and the only time we get to see people like Willie is when we're being naughty, or we're in a big accident, or there's something going on that really isn't good for us, they kind of get a negative connotation. So we don't love them so much. But the ice cream man, nay, we love him a lot. Especially when we're kids. I don't love them that much because they keep playing these jangly tunes and all over the place in the winter, and I don't get that. But there you go.
That's
So
because the ice cream man in Scotland doesn't just sell ice cream.
I know, I wasn't going to go there. That's another subject for another time. So we love things. We are in love with certain things at certain times because we're enjoying them. It makes us feel good. It gives us a sense of expansion. It makes the chemicals in our brain go bananas, like oxytocin, dopamine, GABA, the whole thing going on. The pleasure centers are like Christmas tree lights going absolutely wild. Then it kind of calms down because, you know, the battery runs out a bit. You have to kind of keep it going a little bit that way. But we always will find as human beings things that spark our interest. And, you know, it doesn't matter how long you've been married or how in love you are, you will possibly notice somebody else and say, ooh, that looks nice. But that's it, it's a thought. And it's one of those things that it makes you feel good to think that, that's fine. Looking after ourselves is also good when we look in the mirror and go, yeah, you are looking good. You're looking well. Look at those eyes, they're sparkling. This is really great. And then you catch yourself and say, what are you talking about? Because then that's when the judge comes running back in going, oh, I was just away for a coffee break and look what happens. You're out there giving yourself self-love all over the shop. Not having that. But it's one of those things, it's the most important thing. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for acts of love, acts of peace, acts of balance, acts of imbalance on occasions. But we're here. We have the capacity, and as Tanys said, it's an unlimited capacity to love. To receive it, to give it, to show it, to ask for it. And by that, I don't mean, oh, love me, and I'll do anything you want me to do. Just love me, love me. You're not a collie. Don't do that. I deserve love. I am worthy of love. I am able and capable and willing to give love. And now it's time to go and love something else, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.